I sent my kids to their dad's house for the weekend. My daughter whispered, "Please don't make us go." Then my son showed me what his stepmom had been making them do. I had packed their clothes, toothbrushes, school tablets, and the little things they always insisted on bringing. Chloe had her sketchbook. Matt had his gray hoodie. I looked at Chloe and said, "What do you mean, don't make you go?" She shook her head fast. "Nothing. Never mind." Then Matt went still. That was what scared me. Not just her words. His silence. Matt was 8, and he had that little boy habit of acting like nothing hurt him. But that morning, he looked at me with his hands hidden in his sleeves and whispered, "I don't want to bring my hoodie." I frowned. "Why not?" He stared at the floor. "Because it won't be mine there." That was the first moment I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I told them to sit at the kitchen table. Then I texted their dad, Brian, and said we were running a few minutes behind. I sat across from them and tried to keep my voice calm, even though my heart was already pounding. "What's been happening over there?" Chloe looked at Matt. Matt looked at her. And in that one small glance, I knew they had been carrying something together. Chloe was 11. Old enough to understand when adults got uncomfortable with the truth. Old enough to protect her little brother. Too young to be doing either. She whispered, "We're not really visiting Dad anymore. We're just extra hands." I asked her what she meant. She told me that at their dad's house, they were expected to watch the younger kids, share almost everything they brought, give up space when Daisy's kids wanted it, and understand whenever Brian couldn't spend time with them because Daisy was overwhelmed. Daisy was Brian's wife. She was also the woman he cheated with before our divorce. I don't start with that because I want sympathy. I know it makes me sound bitter. Maybe part of me still is. But I had done the therapy. I had cried in the shower. I had practiced being civil until it felt like a second job. I had sat across from Daisy at school events and forced myself not to remember the messages I found 5 years ago when she was saved in Brian's phone under a fake coworker name. I got past a lot. I got past the affair enough to co-parent. I got past the humiliation enough to say hello in public. I even got past the fact that she and Brian married less than a year after the divorce was final. But I was not past watching my children shrink themselves to make her household easier. Brian and Daisy had a crowded house outside Boise. Daisy had 2 kids from before Brian, Oscar, and Piper. Then she and Brian had 2 younger kids together, Zane and Molly. When Chloe and Matt were there, that made 6 kids in a 3-bedroom house. I knew it was loud. I knew it was messy. I knew blended families were hard. I never expected my kids to be treated like royalty. I never told them they were better than Daisy's children. I corrected them when they called Daisy that woman. I packed extra snacks. I reminded them to be respectful. I told them their dad loved them even when he was busy. But I expected them to feel like they mattered. Matt finally told me that Oscar kept taking his hoodie because he liked it, and when Matt complained, Brian said, "Don't be dramatic. It's just a hoodie. It sounds small. I know that. A hoodie is not a tragedy. A hoodie is not abuse. A hoodie is not a reason to blow up a co-parenting arrangement." But to an 8-year-old boy who already felt like his dad had built a whole new family where he didn't quite fit, that hoodie was one of the few things that still belonged only to him. Chloe said sometimes they had to sleep wherever there was space. If Piper wanted the bed, Chloe slept on the floor with a blanket. If Zane wanted Matt's pillow, Matt was told to be kind because Zane was little. If Molly cried, Chloe was asked to help calm her down because she was so mature. That phrase made me sick. So mature. Adults love calling children mature when what they really mean is convenient. I asked Chloe how long this had been going on. She shrugged and said, "A while." I wanted to ask why she hadn't told me sooner, but I already knew. Kids hide things when they think telling the truth will make life harder. Kids stay quiet when they hear adults say, "Be flexible" enough times. And I had said those things too, because I thought I was protecting them from becoming bitter. Instead, I had taught them to make themselves smaller. Brian pulled into my driveway a few minutes later. I saw his truck through the window, and for the first time in years, I did not care about sounding dramatic. I opened the door before he could knock. He smiled like everything was normal. "Hey, ready?" I said, "Not yet." His face changed. "What's going on?" I stepped outside and pulled the door mostly shut behind me. "The kids just told me they don't feel comfortable at your house." He sighed immediately, like I was already annoying him. "Tess, come on." That was when I knew this wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a performance where he acted exhausted and I acted unreasonable. I kept my voice low. "Chloe says she's being used as childcare. Matt says his things keep getting taken. They both say they're being treated like guests who are expected to help." Brian rubbed his forehead. "There are 6 kids in the house. Everyone helps. They are not coming over to parent your younger kids. No one is making them parent anyone." Then why did my 11-year-old just say she feels like an unpaid babysitter? His jaw tightened. "You're twisting this." I stared at him. "I'm repeating what she said." He looked past me at the closed door, then lowered his voice. "You know Daisy is overwhelmed." There it was. The same excuse, wrapped in softer words. Daisy was overwhelmed. Daisy was trying. Daisy had a lot on her plate. Daisy felt rejected. Daisy wanted the kids to bond. Daisy needed help. Somehow, Daisy's feelings were always treated like a household emergency, and my kids' feelings were treated like bad attitudes. I said, your wife being overwhelmed does not make Chloe responsible. Brian looked offended. She's part of the family. She is your daughter first. His face went hard. Don't start this. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because that was always what he said when I got too close to the truth. Don't start this. Don't make this about the past. Don't poison the kids. Don't make me feel guilty. I opened the door and told the kids to stay home that day. Brian argued on the porch for almost 15 minutes, but I did not let them go. At first, I thought that was the final straw. I was wrong. The real final straw happened 2 weeks later on Chloe's birthday. Brian had promised to take her to dinner. Just him and her. She had been talking about it all week. She picked a casual restaurant in Boise because they had chocolate cake she liked. She wore the necklace he gave her last Christmas. She kept checking the window every few minutes, trying to pretend she wasn't excited. It hurt to watch because she was trying not to expect too much. That is a terrible thing to see in your child. 2 hours before he was supposed to pick her up, Brian texted me. Change of plans. Molly has a fever and Daisy is exhausted. I'll bring Chloe and Matt here instead. We can do cake with everyone. I read the message 3 times. Then I wrote back, no. You promised Chloe one-on-one dinner. He replied, you don't understand what it's like over here. I stared at those words while Chloe sat at the kitchen table drawing little flowers on the corner of a napkin, pretending not to watch my face. Maybe I didn't understand what it was like over there. But I understood what it was like to watch my daughter swallow disappointment because she didn't want to be difficult. I called him. When he answered, I didn't even say hello. I said, you are not canceling her birthday dinner. He sounded irritated. I'm not canceling. I'm adjusting. No. You're replacing her birthday with your household chaos. That's not fair. What's not fair is telling an 11-year-old she gets one dinner with her dad, then making her share it because Daisy can't handle the house for 2 hours. He snapped, don't talk about my wife like that. I said, then stop making your wife the reason your daughter gets disappointed. There was silence. Then he said, fine. I'll come alone. But when he arrived, I could see the resentment on his face from the porch. Chloe still ran to the truck. That hurt too. Because kids can be disappointed by a parent and still crave them so much it almost looks like forgiveness. She came home later quiet and red-eyed. She said dinner was fine. She said the food was good. She said dad was tired. Then, while I was helping her put leftovers in the fridge, she said, he kept texting Daisy. I froze. She looked down at the container in her hands. He said he felt bad for leaving her alone with the circus. The circus. That was what he called his own house while sitting across from his daughter on her birthday. Not our family. Not the kids. Not home. The circus. As if Chloe's one birthday dinner was some selfish little escape from the burden of everyone else. I asked, did he say anything else? She shrugged. He said next time maybe we should all do something together so nobody feels left out. Nobody. That word followed me around the rest of the night. Nobody feels left out. Except Chloe, apparently. Except Matt. Except the 2 kids who only saw their dad every other weekend and still had to compete with everyone who lived with him full-time. A few days later, Daisy called me. Not texted. Called. I almost didn't answer. But I thought maybe it was about scheduling or one of the kids left something at their house. Instead, I heard her crying. Real crying too. Not fake, not theatrical. She sounded exhausted and shaky, and for a second, the human part of me felt bad. Then she said, I don't know what you want from me. I stood in my kitchen with one hand on the counter. What are you talking about? She sniffed. You're making this impossible. You're encouraging separation between the kids, and now Chloe and Matt come over acting like they don't belong here. My stomach tightened. Do they feel like they belong there? They would if you stopped putting ideas in their heads. I laughed once, short and sharp, before I could stop myself. Daisy, I didn't tell Matt his hoodie wasn't his anymore. I didn't tell Chloe to babysit your younger kids. She went quiet for a second, then said, they are part of a bigger family now. That means they have to adjust too. They have adjusted. No, they haven't, she said. Chloe is cold to me. She barely speaks. Matt gets upset whenever the little ones touch his things. They act like my kids are beneath them. I gripped the edge of the counter. They are children. So are mine. I know that. Then why do yours get to make everyone feel guilty? That sentence told me everything. She didn't want help understanding my kids. She wanted me to correct them into silence. I asked her, what exactly do you want me to do? She exhaled shakily. I want you to tell them to stop making their dad feel bad. I want you to tell them this is their family too. I want you to tell Chloe she can't keep rejecting me forever. That was when something in me went flat. Not rage. Not panic. Just a clean, cold clarity. I said, Chloe is 11. She is not responsible for making you feel accepted. Daisy's voice changed. Wow. And Matt is 8. He is allowed to want his own things. He is allowed to want time with his father. They are not emotional support kids for your household. She started crying harder. You have no idea how hard it is to be a stepmom when the biological mother keeps a wall up. And there it was again. Her pain. Her struggle. Her role. Her need to be accepted. I said, you helped create this situation. I am not going to comfort you inside the life you built on top of mine. She went silent. For a second, I thought she hung up. Then she said very softly, that was 5 years ago. You need to get over it. I looked around my kitchen. At the lunchboxes drying by the sink. At the birthday napkins still sitting on the counter because Chloe didn't want me to throw them away yet. At Matt's hoodie hanging over the back of a chair because he was afraid to take it to his dad's house. And I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the nerve of it shocked me. I said, I am over Brian. I am over the marriage. I am even over you most days. But I am not over watching my children pay for choices they did not make. She hung up. That night, Brian called. I knew it was coming. I let it ring twice before answering. He didn't say hello either. What the hell did you say to Daisy? I sat down on the edge of my bed. The truth. She's been crying for hours. I'm sorry she's upset. No, you're not. He was right. I wasn't. Not in the way he wanted. He said, you made her feel like she'll always be a homewrecker to you. I closed my eyes. I didn't make her anything. I stopped pretending history doesn't matter. That's poisoning the kids. No, Brian. What's hurting the kids is being treated like guests in their father's house. He scoffed. They're not guests. They're part of the family. Then act like their father, not like Daisy's assistant manager. That one hit him. His voice dropped. You don't know what you're talking about. I know Chloe cried after her birthday dinner. I know Matt won't bring his favorite hoodie to your house. I know they both asked to come home early. I know Chloe feels responsible for keeping the little ones quiet. That's enough. He said, so what, my other kids don't matter? And that was where I may have crossed a line. Because I was tired. I was angry. I had spent years swallowing words so everyone could say I was civil. I had smiled at school events. I had nodded at birthday parties. I had corrected my kids when they were rude. I had made Brian look more reliable than he was because I didn't want them to hate him. And, in that moment, I was done. I said, to me? Not the same way mine do. The line went silent. Then he said, that is a disgusting thing to say. Maybe it was. I don't hate Daisy's kids. I don't want them neglected. I don't want them punished for the choices adults made. Oscar and Piper did not ask for any of this. Zane and Molly are innocent. They deserve patience, safety, love, and stability. But they are not my children. I did not choose to have 6 kids in that house. I did not choose to blend those families. I did not choose to turn Chloe and Matt's weekends with their dad into shared sacrifice, unpaid babysitting, and emotional compromise. Brian did. Daisy did. And somehow I was being asked to mother the consequences. I said, quieter this time, my kids need to feel comfortable in your home before you worry about whether your wife feels validated. He called me selfish and hung up. For a few minutes, I just sat there holding the phone. Then I cried. Not dramatic crying. Not loud. Just the kind of silent crying where your body finally admits it is tired. The next morning, I got a call from Brian's mother, Vera. I almost didn't answer because I assumed Brian had sent her to scold me. Vera had defended him through almost everything. When he cheated, she cried and said she loved me, but she also said, marriage is complicated. When he married Daisy, she asked me to be gracious. When I struggled with co-parenting, she reminded me that kids need their father. So I braced myself. But Vera's voice was soft. Tess, I need to ask you something. I stood in the laundry room with a basket against my hip. Okay. Are Chloe and Matt unhappy at Brian's house? I swallowed. Yes. She sighed, and it sounded like she already knew. Then she told me she had stopped by Brian's house the week before to drop off groceries. The house was chaos. Molly was crying. Zane was screaming about a broken tablet. Piper was arguing with Daisy in the kitchen. Oscar had friends over without asking. Brian was in the garage, trying to fix something. And Chloe was sitting alone on the porch. Not reading. Not drawing. Just sitting there with her arms around her knees. Vera said she asked Chloe if she was okay, and Chloe smiled that polite smile kids use when they don't want adults to worry. Then Vera went inside and found Matt standing in the hallway holding his backpack like he was waiting for permission to exist. That sentence broke me. Waiting for permission to exist. I had been trying to explain that feeling for months, and Vera said it in one breath. She said, your kids should feel comfortable in their father's home. That should have been obvious to him. I put the laundry basket down because my knees felt weak. For the first time in a long time, someone from Brian's side of the family said the thing I had been too exhausted to keep defending. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't using the kids to punish him. Something was wrong. Vera said she was going to talk to Brian. I didn't ask her what she planned to say. I didn't need to. Her voice had that quiet grandmother steel in it, the kind that doesn't yell because it doesn't have to. 2 days later, Brian texted me. We need to talk about structure. I stared at the message for a long time. Not apologies. Not accountability. Just structure. Still, it was more than he had offered before. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop in Boise while the kids were at school. Daisy wasn't invited. He didn't like that, but I told him this conversation was between the two parents who shared Chloe and Matt. Not spouses. Not step-parents. Not the whole blended family committee. Just us. Brian looked tired when he walked in. Not fake tired. Real tired. There were shadows under his eyes, and he kept rubbing his jaw like he had been clenching it. For a second, I saw the man I used to know. The one who held newborn Chloe with both hands like she was made of glass. The one who cried when Matt had his first fever. The one who promised me our kids would never feel second to anything. Then he sat down and said, "My mom thinks I'm failing them." I didn't soften it. "You are." His eyes snapped up. I thought he would get defensive. He usually did. But he just looked away. I said, "I don't think you mean to. But you are." He swallowed. "Daisy says you want to separate them from everyone. I want them to have a father. Not just a place to visit." He stared at the table. I kept going because if I stopped, I knew I would lose my nerve. Chloe should not be managing your younger kids. Matt should not have to give up his belongings to prove he's kind. They should not be sleeping wherever there's space like their cousins visiting over the holidays. They see you 4 days a month, Brian. 4. And somehow even that time isn't theirs. His face tightened, but he didn't interrupt. That was new. I said, "I'm not asking you to love your other kids less. I'm asking you to stop acting like Chloe and Matt have to earn space in your life by being easy." His eyes got red. He looked out the window for a long time before saying, "I didn't realize it was that bad." Part of me wanted to say, "Because you didn't want to." But I didn't. Not because he didn't deserve it, but because the conversation was finally about the kids, and I was not going to drag it back into our old marriage. He said Vera had been blunt with him. She told him Chloe looked lonely. She told him Matt looked lost. She told him his house might be full, but that didn't mean his children felt included. Then she told him something that apparently got through. She said, "You built a new family. That doesn't mean your first 2 kids should have to audition for a place in it." When Brian repeated that line, his voice cracked. I didn't comfort him. That was not my job anymore. We agreed to changes. Chloe and Matt would not be used as childcare. If Brian had them for the weekend, he would plan at least 1 block of time with just them, even if it was simple. Breakfast. A walk. A trip to the park. Mini golf. The comic store. Anything that told them, "I see you." They would have their own sleeping space when they stayed over. Not perfect, but consistent. Their belongings were not communal property. If sharing happened, it had to be voluntary. And if the house was too chaotic for Brian to manage that, then he needed to adjust visitation until he could. He didn't love that last part. But he didn't fight it either. When I got home, Daisy had texted me. "I hope one day you can see that I'm trying." I stared at that message while standing in the hallway, still holding my keys. A year ago, I would have answered carefully. I would have written something gentle and neutral like, "I know this is hard for everyone." I would have tried to soothe her because peace felt safer than honesty. But I was done betraying myself for temporary peace. So I didn't respond. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted to punish her. But because I did not trust myself to be kind in a way that erased what my kids had been feeling. A week later, Brian took Chloe out by herself. They went mini golfing. It was simple. Almost stupidly simple. One afternoon. Cheap arcade tokens. Bad pizza from the snack counter. A plastic bracelet Chloe won from a prize machine. When she came home, she was smiling. Then she saw me notice and the smile disappeared like she had done something wrong. That hurt more than the sadness. I said, "You're allowed to have a good time with your dad, sweetheart." She looked at me carefully. "You're not mad." I felt my chest ache. "No," I said. "Never for that." She nodded, but her eyes got shiny. Then she said, "It was nice. He didn't check his phone as much." As much. Not perfect. Not fixed. But better. I took the win because sometimes that is what healing looks like. Not a grand apology. Not a dramatic courtroom moment. Just your child coming home a little less heavy than when she left. The next weekend, Matt asked if his dad could take him to the comic store without everybody coming. I said, "That's something your dad needs to arrange, but I'll support it." He looked down at his hoodie, tugging at the sleeves. "Can I bring this?" I kept my voice steady. "Yes. And it should come back with you." He nodded like that meant more than it should have. Maybe to him it did. Brian has been following the new structure for a month now. Not perfectly. There have been hiccups. Daisy still makes little comments through the kids, like saying it's sad when families don't want to be together. Chloe told me that once, and I had to walk into the laundry room and breathe before I answered. But Brian has corrected it twice. That matters. Vera has also been showing up more. Not in a controlling way, but enough that the house seems less like a storm when Chloe and Matt are there. She took all the kids to the park one Saturday so Brian could have lunch with just my two. She called me afterward and said, "They left today." I cried after that call too. I cry a lot more than people probably think. Not because I'm weak. Because I spent years holding everything in so nobody could accuse me of being bitter. I used to think being the bigger person meant absorbing every insult, every inconvenience, every uncomfortable feeling, and somehow turning it into cooperation. I thought if I stayed calm enough, fair enough, soft enough, my kids would be spared. But sometimes being calm just teaches people that you will carry what they refuse to face. I don't regret telling Brian that my children come first. I do regret how ugly it sounded when I said Daisy's kids don't matter to me the same way mine do. I know they are innocent. I know they are children. I know they didn't ask to be born into a messy family with adults still tripping over old wounds. But the truth is still the truth. They have a mother. They have Brian in their house every day. They have a life that, chaotic or not, is built around them. Chloe and Matt only get pieces of him. And I will not let those pieces be taken from them too. For years, I smiled so everyone could call us civil. I packed extra snacks. I fixed attitudes. I reminded my kids to be respectful. I swallowed the history of Daisy and Brian so many times I almost convinced myself it had stopped mattering. But being civil does not mean handing my children over to become background characters in the family that replaced theirs. Now, when Brian tries, I let him. When Chloe smiles after seeing him, I don't punish her with my pain. When Matt wants to bring his hoodie, I tell him he should. I want them to have a father. I always did. I just refuse to pretend that wanting a father means accepting scraps. Maybe that makes me petty. Maybe it makes me protective. Maybe both are true. The calm victory is not that Daisy cried or that Brian finally looked guilty. It is not that Vera sided with me, even though I won't lie, that helped. The victory is smaller than that. It is Chloe walking into the house with a cheap plastic bracelet on her wrist and not looking completely drained. It is Matt asking for what he wants instead of pretending he does not want anything. It is me finally understanding that peace without protection is not peace. It is just silence. So I'm leaving the arrangement in place for now. Brian gets his chance to do better. Daisy gets no emotional labor from me. And my kids get to know that at least one parent will stop the car, open the door, and listen when they whisper, "Please don't make us go." But I still keep thinking about what Brian said. That my words were disgusting. That I made innocent kids sound less important. Maybe he is right. Maybe I said the quiet part too harshly. Maybe blended families only survive when adults stop keeping score. But my kids have already paid enough for a life they never chose. So am I wrong for telling my ex-husband that his biological children need to feel safe and wanted first, even if that means I don't prioritize his new wife's feelings or her kids the same way I prioritize mine?